Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey to the distant past, where some of the wisest minds ever lived, seeking peace and tranquility in a world that was often chaotic. Picture yourself standing by a flickering fire, the warmth from the flames reaching your face as the soft whispers of philosophers fill the air, their words a mix of wisdom and simplicity, designed to bring peace to the restless mind. You probably won't survive this journey without feeling a little more peaceful yourself. It's almost as though they figured out something we're still trying to understand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's not just about the numbers, it's about creating a community of seekers. I'd love to know where you're joining from, so feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far our peaceful journey spreads tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Ancient wisdom. There's something magnetic about it, right? Despite all of the advancements we've made in technology, medicine, and virtually every other field, we still find ourselves turning back to the old teachings for answers to life's deepest questions. These ancient thinkers weren't interested in piling on complicated theories or confusing our minds further. In fact, the simplest answers were often the most profound. The wisdom they left behind has stood the test of time and continues to offer us tools for navigating the often chaotic world we live in today. But where did all of this start? It started with a simple, almost innocent question. How do we live a good life? Philosophers and sages from ancient civilizations all asked that question, and the answers they found have influenced countless generations. It's almost as though the search for peace and purpose was built into human nature. Even thousands of years ago, as cities grew and human societies began to form more complex structures, the quest for inner peace began to rise. The world of 2,500 years ago was just as full of uncertainty as our world today. There were wars, plagues, political unrest, and natural disasters. Sound familiar? Yet, despite all of this, the teachings that emerged from this period were not about escaping reality or denying hardship, but about how to face it all with grace and tranquility. One of the first to really lay down the foundation for philosophical thought was Socrates, an ancient Greek philosopher who famously said that the unexamined life was not worth living. But his approach to life wasn't quite what you might expect from someone who is regarded as the father of Western philosophy. Instead of offering concrete answers, Socrates believed that the path to wisdom lay in constant questioning, always asking why and how, until you reached a level of understanding that gave you peace. Historians still argue whether Socrates was truly the first to lay down the principles of wisdom through self-examination and dialogue. Some argue that the seeds of this approach existed in other cultures long before Socrates' time. In ancient India, the Upanishads, sacred philosophical texts, also focused on deep introspection and finding truth through reflection. In China, the teachings of Laozi and Confucius embraced similar themes, stressing the importance of humility, balance, and self-awareness. So, while Socrates' method became foundational for Western thought, it's worth recognizing that the ancient East also had their own powerful, parallel philosophical traditions. Socrates didn't just sit around in his study reading books and pondering abstract concepts. He spent most of his life walking through the streets of Athens, engaging in conversations with ordinary people. His approach was revolutionary for its time. He didn't claim to have all the answers. Instead, he believed that true wisdom came from questioning everything, including the status quo, societal norms, and even one's own beliefs. By encouraging people to think critically about their lives, he opened up a world of self-awareness that eventually helped countless others find a sense of calm amid chaos. Socrates' method is now known as the Socratic method, a form of cooperative, argumentative dialogue that encourages open-ended questions and debates in search of the truth. And, in a way, it was his method of calm inquiry that helped shape what we now think of as the pursuit of wisdom. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Some scholars argue that Socrates' method was nothing new at all, and that similar techniques of inquiry had existed long before. Philosophers in ancient China, like Confucius, emphasized reflection, proper conduct, and humility, and their teachings encouraged a peace derived from personal integrity. On the other hand, Buddhist teachings, emerging around the same time as Socrates' life in Greece, also suggested that peace comes through self-reflection, meditation, and a clear mind. It's fascinating how these different traditions, across different parts of the world, all seem to arrive at the same conclusion. Calm and clarity come from within. But while Socrates may have been asking questions, others, like the Buddha, were offering answers, or at least paths toward them. The Buddha's journey to enlightenment was less about philosophical debate and more about experiencing the world through a state of heightened awareness. By training the mind to stay calm amidst the ups and downs of life, the Buddha showed that true peace comes when we stop attaching ourselves to fleeting emotions, desires, and thoughts. As we delve deeper into the wisdom of the ancients, we'll encounter teachings from all corners of the globe, each with their own unique spin on how to find calm. Yet, no matter where we look, the core message remains the same. Life is full of turbulence, but it's how we navigate it that determines whether we find peace or chaos. Now, before we get too deep into all of that, think about your own life. Can you remember a time when you simply sat with a difficult moment? A moment where the noise of your thoughts seemed unbearable. And then, over time, it passed. You survived. You found peace, if only for a moment. That's the essence of what these ancient teachers were talking about. Peace doesn't come from avoiding life's difficulties. It comes from accepting them and finding balance within them. In a world where we often look for quick fixes and instant gratification, the timeless wisdom of these ancient thinkers reminds us that finding peace is a journey. It's not about being perfect, but about learning to live in harmony with the challenges life throws our way. And, as we continue our journey through the teachings of the greatest minds in history, I encourage you to reflect on your own life and the lessons you've learned along the way. The answers, just like in ancient times, are already within you as you sink deeper into this journey. Imagine the world around you transforming into a place of unshakable calm. There's an ancient tradition that teaches the art of serenity amidst chaos, the Stoics. Picture yourself walking through the bustling streets of ancient Rome, where the noise of daily life is enough to overwhelm even the strongest of minds. Yet, there are a few calm souls among the crowd. Stoic philosophers who walk with a quiet confidence, their minds steady, their faces unperturbed by the clamor around them. They've mastered an art of tranquility that we still seek to understand today. You probably won't survive this story without feeling a little more in control of your own emotions. The Stoics were, in a way, the original practitioners of mindfulness, except they didn't need fancy apps or yoga mats. They simply needed their minds. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're joining from and your local time. I'm curious about the far-reaching corners of this peaceful journey. Now, dim the lights, let that fan hum softly in the background, and let's continue together. The Stoics were an ancient Greek school of philosophy, and their teachings continue to captivate the modern world. They were all about control, not over other people, but over oneself. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the idea that we cannot control external events, only how we respond to them. This simple yet profound insight has provided a mental toolkit for resilience, peace, and wisdom for over 2,000 years. Think about that for a moment. How often do you find yourself reacting to the chaos of the world, swept up in emotions that you didn't invite? Whether it's a stressful day at work, an argument with a friend, or the endless noise of social media, there's an almost constant bombardment of external events that try to pull us out of our center. The Stoics, however, taught that true peace comes from within and from the ability to choose how we respond to the world. One of the most famous Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, put it bluntly: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Epictetus, who was born a slave, knew hardship firsthand. Yet, through his teachings, he showed that even in the most difficult circumstances, we have the power to control our thoughts and reactions. This is a key lesson for us today. No matter what happens around us, we can still choose to cultivate inner peace. Historians still argue whether Stoic philosophy was truly the first to teach this concept of emotional control. Some suggest that earlier philosophical schools, such as the ancient Indian practices of yoga and meditation, already explored similar themes of self-control and mental discipline. What sets the Stoics apart, however, is their unique focus on virtue, the belief that living a life in accordance with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance would lead to lasting peace. Let's take a moment to pause here. Think about the last time you were in a situation that frustrated you. Maybe it was something as small as traffic or as big as a personal conflict. In that moment, did you feel the urge to react immediately, to give in to the feeling of frustration? Now, imagine that, instead of reacting, you took a deep breath and reminded yourself that this is simply an external event. It's up to you to choose how you respond. You don't need to let the chaos of the world rattle you. This, in essence, is the Stoic way of life. Not denying the reality of external events, but recognizing that how we respond is within our control. But there's more to Stoicism than just emotional control. One of its core tenets is the idea of living in harmony with nature and accepting the natural course of life. The Stoics believed that everything in the universe is interconnected, and that we, as individuals, are a part of that larger whole. When we act in accordance with nature, accepting what is and working with what we have, we align ourselves with the flow of the universe. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast river, the current strong and unrelenting. You could fight against the current, using all your energy to resist, but it would only tire you out. Alternatively, you could let the current carry you, working with it instead of against it. This image of flowing with nature is a perfect metaphor for the Stoic philosophy. Life is full of unpredictable currents, but when we align ourselves with the flow, we are at peace. There's a fascinating paradox at the heart of Stoic thinking. The more we let go of our attachment to things we can't control, the more powerful we become. The Stoics taught that true freedom comes from letting go of the desire for external rewards, status, and material possessions. Instead, they focused on cultivating an inner strength, one that is impervious to the ups and downs of life. As you continue on your journey, it's worth reflecting on how these teachings might apply to your own life. How often do we chase after things that we believe will bring us happiness, only to find that the happiness is fleeting? The Stoics would argue that true happiness doesn't come from acquiring more. It comes from letting go of the need to acquire in the first place. The more we cling to external validation and material wealth, the more we set ourselves up for disappointment. True peace, the Stoics believed, lies in releasing our attachments and accepting life as it is. And perhaps, in a world where everything seems uncertain, this message is more relevant than ever. With constant news cycles, social media, and the pressure to keep up with the ever-changing tides of life, we can easily lose our sense of inner peace. But just like the Stoics, we can find a quiet strength by focusing on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and how we respond to the world. The Stoic influence is everywhere today, in modern-day mindfulness practices, in self-help books, and even in our everyday conversations about letting go and being present. The fact that these teachings still resonate after more than 2 millennia speaks to their power and relevance in our lives. Remember, life is a river, and you're already swimming. The more you accept the current, the more serene the journey becomes. Let go of the need to control everything and see how your peace unfolds naturally, just like the ancient Stoics taught. Now that we've stepped into the world of Stoicism, let's venture further east, to a place where harmony, simplicity, and balance are not just philosophical ideals, but ways of life. Picture yourself walking through the lush, green landscapes of ancient China. The air is thick with the scent of jasmine and earth, and in the distance you can hear the faint sound of a bamboo flute playing a soothing melody. Among the quiet beauty of this world, you encounter a figure, his robes flowing gently as he walks with purpose. He is Confucius, one of the most influential philosophers in history, and his teachings center on one simple concept: harmony. Confucius is known for promoting an orderly, peaceful society through ethical behavior, strong family values, and respect for others. His philosophy, Confucianism, seeks balance in all aspects of life, and through his teachings, he helped shape the fabric of Chinese culture for over 2 millennia. The ideas he championed, respect for elders, love of family, and the pursuit of moral excellence, are still deeply ingrained in Chinese society today. You probably won't survive this section without gaining a new perspective on how relationships and simplicity can lead to peace. Confucius's teachings might just remind you of the power of kindness, structure, and humility in your own life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As we continue, share your location and the time where you are. I'm curious to know how far this calm journey is reaching tonight. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's continue our peaceful adventure together. Confucius, born in 551 BCE, spent his life searching for ways to bring order and peace to a society that was often in disarray. Ancient China was a land torn apart by political strife, social upheaval, and moral decay. Yet, Confucius believed that the key to restoring peace lay not in grand political reforms or military action, but in the cultivation of virtuous individuals who, by living ethical lives, would contribute to the overall harmony of society. What Confucius was really after was the idea of ren, or benevolence, an attitude of kindness, compassion, and empathy. For Confucius, the foundation of all relationships was rooted in respect and moral behavior. He taught that by honoring our parents, caring for our families, and treating others with respect, we can create a peaceful world. In many ways, his philosophy was about creating harmony, not just within society, but within ourselves as individuals. Historians still argue whether Confucius's ideas were purely his own, or the result of centuries of cultural development. Some believe that the foundations of his teachings were already embedded in early Chinese texts, such as the I Ching, which discussed the importance of harmony and balance in life. Others argue that Confucius was revolutionary in his emphasis on ethical behavior and the cultivation of virtue as the path to peace. Regardless of where his ideas originated, Confucius's teachings became a cornerstone of Chinese culture and were eventually adopted by other parts of East Asia, including Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. In a world that often seemed in turmoil, Confucius offered a clear roadmap for how to live a life of peace and purpose. But Confucius didn't stop at just ethical behavior. He also emphasized the importance of structure, especially within the family and society. The family, in Confucian thought, was seen as the microcosm of society. If we can create harmony within the family unit, by respecting elders, honoring our duties, and nurturing love and care, we can then extend that harmony to the larger society. By focusing on the smallest building block of society, Confucius believed we could restore order to the entire nation. Think about that for a moment. In today's fast-paced, individualistic world, where family dynamics are often stretched thin and people move away from home for work, the idea of building harmony at home might seem a bit old-fashioned. But it's worth reflecting on how the relationships we nurture at home can ripple out into the larger world. How often do we forget that peace starts with those closest to us? Perhaps the most beautiful part of Confucius's philosophy is his concept of junzi, or the superior person. The junzi is someone who is morally upright, compassionate, and strives to live a life of virtue. This is not an ideal reserved for emperors or rulers. Confucius believed that anyone could embody the qualities of a junzi, regardless of their status. It's the idea that peace comes not from external power, but from inner virtue and moral discipline. This resonates with a theme we've already encountered in Stoic philosophy, the idea that peace comes from within. While Stoicism focuses on controlling emotions and accepting what we cannot change, Confucianism emphasizes the cultivation of virtue and ethical relationships. Both philosophies point to the same conclusion, that peace begins inside, and it radiates outward through our actions toward others. In our modern world, we might find ourselves caught up in the complexities of life. Our careers, technology, and the endless distractions that pull our attention away from what really matters. But Confucius's teachings remind us to slow down and focus on the things that bring true peace: compassion, respect, and the nurturing of strong, ethical relationships. As we continue, think about the relationships in your own life. How often do we truly take the time to show respect, kindness, and care to the people who matter most? Confucius would argue that if we want a peace in the world, it starts with the people we interact with every day. And maybe, just maybe, we could all benefit from bringing a little more of Confucius's wisdom into our daily lives. When we treat others with benevolence, when we focus on building harmony within our families, when we act with virtue in all things, we take the first steps toward a more peaceful world. As we continue our journey toward wisdom and peace, we now turn to a figure whose teachings resonated in both the East and West. Someone who showed the world that true peace can only be found when we stop fighting the inevitable. The Buddha. Picture yourself walking through a peaceful grove in ancient India, surrounded by tall, swaying trees. The air is warm, and the only sound is the gentle rustling of leaves. Underneath a large, spreading tree sits Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would become the Buddha. His face is serene, his eyes closed in quiet meditation, embodying the ultimate state of inner peace. You probably won't survive this story without feeling a wave of calm wash over you. The Buddha's teachings were revolutionary in their simplicity, and they continue to guide people in their search for peace today. But how did a prince from a world of luxury come to this moment of profound enlightenment? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, feel free to share where you're from and your local time. I'm curious to know how far our peaceful journey has spread. Now, dim the lights, relax, and let's continue. Siddhartha Gautama, born around 563 BCE, was the son of a king, and his life, at least in the beginning, was filled with every luxury one could imagine. Yet, despite all of this, Siddhartha was deeply troubled by the suffering he saw around him. As a young man, he ventured outside the palace walls for the first time and encountered the harsh realities of life: old age, sickness, and death. These sights shook him to his core. How could people live in peace when suffering seemed to be a constant companion? His awakening began with a simple but profound realization. Suffering was a natural part of life, but it wasn't something to fear or run from. In fact, it was something that, when understood, could lead to the deepest peace. The Buddha's insight was that peace isn't the absence of suffering, but the ability to find peace within suffering. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment to our desires, to our possessions, to our very selves. It is our cravings, our desire to control everything around us, that leads to unhappiness. When we let go of our attachments, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of longing and disappointment. This idea, central to Buddhist philosophy, is known as the Four Noble Truths, which lay the foundation for how to end suffering. The first of the Four Noble Truths is the recognition that life involves suffering. This is not a pessimistic outlook, but a clear-eyed acknowledgement of the realities of life. Everyone suffers. No one escapes. But the second truth is the key. The cause of suffering is craving and attachment. By understanding this, we begin to realize that we are not victims of suffering, but rather the creators of it, through our attachment to things that are fleeting. Historians still argue over the origins of Buddhist philosophy. Some believe that its core ideas may have been influenced by earlier spiritual traditions in India, including the Upanishads, which also explored concepts of the soul and the nature of reality. However, what sets Buddhism apart is its focus on practical steps for achieving inner peace. Unlike other philosophies of the time, which focused on understanding the nature of the universe or the gods, the Buddha's teachings were focused on the practical aspects of human life: how to live peacefully, how to handle suffering, and how to find a way out of the cycle of desire and suffering. But the Buddha didn't stop at simply understanding suffering. He taught that the way to end suffering was through the Eightfold Path, a set of 8 practices that, when followed, lead to enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of suffering. These practices include right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Each step is a way of living in harmony with oneself and the world. The beauty of the Buddha's teachings is that they are universal. They are not tied to any particular time or place, and they transcend religious boundaries. Anyone, anywhere, can practice the path to peace. The Buddha's emphasis on mindfulness and meditation has influenced countless spiritual practices worldwide, including Western mindfulness movements, and continues to be a source of solace for millions of people. Perhaps one of the most profound aspects of the Buddha's teachings is his idea of non-attachment. In a world that constantly urges us to hold on, to collect, to possess, the Buddha's words seem almost countercultural. Let go. The more we cling to things, whether they are material possessions, relationships, or even our identities, the more we become entangled in suffering. But when we learn to let go, we free ourselves from the cycle of desire and disappointment. This doesn't mean that we should live without passion or without caring for others. It means that we should approach life with an open hand, not a clenched fist. When we practice non-attachment, we are not indifferent to the world around us. Rather, we are able to engage with it more fully, without the fear of losing what we love. We can love without clinging, work without anxiety, and live without fear. So, as you reflect on this, think about the things you hold most tightly to in your life. What are your attachments? What do you crave? It's not easy to let go of these things, and it's not about abandoning your desires or goals. It's about finding peace within them. Can you find a way to embrace the present moment, to accept life as it is without clinging to it? This is the core of the Buddha's teaching, a path that leads to peace not by escaping life, but by fully embracing it, free from attachment. The Buddha's philosophy isn't just a set of doctrines, it's a way of living. It's a practice, one that, if followed, can transform the way we experience the world. Peace doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from learning to sit with it and let it pass through us. In this way, the Buddha's path is not just a path of peace, but a path of profound freedom. Now, as we continue this tranquil journey, we step into the world of a man who was known as the gadfly of Athens, constantly challenging the minds of those around him. You may have already guessed, Socrates. But instead of focusing solely on his vast contributions to Western philosophy, let's look at the peculiar way in which he sought peace. Imagine yourself in the dusty streets of ancient Athens, where debate and dialogue were the lifeblood of society. Picture Socrates, a man with a disheveled appearance and a relentless quest for truth, strolling through the market square, engaging anyone who would listen in a spirited conversation. Socrates wasn't interested in offering easy answers or grand philosophies. Instead, he sought to unravel the mysteries of human existence one question at a time. His approach was radically simple. Instead of lecturing, he would ask a question and then ask another, and another, until the person he was speaking to was forced to confront their own assumptions. His ultimate goal was not to prove a point, but to inspire critical thinking and self-awareness. In this process, Socrates believed one could find peace through understanding oneself and one's place in the world. You probably won't survive this section without being struck by the profound simplicity of Socrates' methods. His teachings weren't about lofty ideals or distant concepts. They were about practical, everyday wisdom. His way was an antidote to the distractions and noise that clutter the mind. Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the calm, philosophical journey we're taking together. And remember to share your location and local time. I love hearing where in the world you're joining from. Now, dim those lights, get comfortable, and let's carry on. Socrates, unlike many philosophers, was not interested in accumulating knowledge for the sake of prestige or power. He lived a modest life, spending his days engaging with the people of Athens, questioning their beliefs, and seeking deeper truths. His method, now known as the Socratic method, involved a series of open-ended questions designed to lead his interlocutors toward self-discovery. It wasn't about giving answers, but about guiding others to find the answers within themselves. At the heart of Socrates' philosophy was the idea that knowledge is virtue, that in order to live a good life, one must first understand the self. To Socrates, the pursuit of peace came through self-examination and the constant questioning of one's own assumptions. In a way, he taught that peace comes from knowing what you don't know, from accepting the limitations of your knowledge and constantly striving to expand it. Historians still argue about whether Socrates himself ever wrote anything down. What we know of his teachings comes from the writings of his students, particularly Plato, who immortalized Socrates as the central figure in his dialogues. In these dialogues, Socrates is portrayed not as a lecturer, but as a conversationalist, probing his companions with questions that slowly peel away layers of ignorance, revealing deeper truths. The famous line attributed to Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living," is a call to engage with the world thoughtfully and deliberately. What makes Socrates so fascinating and so relevant today is that his approach to peace was not about retreating from the world or finding quiet corners in which to hide. Instead, it was about engaging with the world at its loudest and most chaotic and learning to find peace within that noise. In this way, Socrates is an early model of mindfulness, teaching us that true peace comes not from avoiding challenges, but from meeting them with open curiosity and awareness. Socrates' method was deceptively simple, yet incredibly profound. Instead of immediately offering solutions or answers to his interlocutors, he would ask them to think critically about their beliefs. He would lead them down a path of inquiry that often left them frustrated, unsure, or even embarrassed. But the point of it all was to break down the walls of arrogance and assumption and replace them with true understanding. And in this way, Socrates believed, we could all begin to live more peacefully. It's not just the act of questioning itself that leads to peace, but the understanding that comes from the process. Through self-reflection and open inquiry, Socrates taught that we can strip away the noise of the world and uncover what truly matters. Peace comes from an awareness of who we are and how we relate to the world around us. Socrates' method is a gentle reminder that life's complexities can be unraveled with patience, humility, and a willingness to learn. But here's the catch. Socrates never believed that he had all the answers. In fact, he famously said, "I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing." This paradoxical statement is at the heart of his philosophy. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we have left to understand. The pursuit of peace, according to Socrates, isn't a destination but a process, a lifelong journey of constant questioning, learning, and growing. This is where Socrates diverges from more traditional paths to peace, such as those taught by the Stoics or the Buddha. Whereas the Stoics emphasized controlling one's emotions and accepting fate, and the Buddha focused on mindfulness and non-attachment, Socrates' path was one of intellectual exploration. He believed that peace could be found through the discovery of truth, through the peeling away of false beliefs, and the uncovering of deeper insights into the self. Think about your own life for a moment. How often do we stop and reflect on our assumptions, our beliefs, and our reactions to the world? In the rush of daily life, it's easy to go on autopilot, to follow routines without really questioning why we do the things we do. Socrates would argue that if we want to find peace, we must make time for self-reflection and examine our lives with a critical eye. It's easy to see how Socrates' method could lead to frustration or confusion, especially if we're not used to thinking so deeply. But at the same time, there is a calming power in slowing down, asking questions, and allowing ourselves to sit with uncertainty. In today's world of fast-paced distractions, Socrates offers us the timeless reminder that peace comes from slowing down, thinking deeply, and continually questioning the world around us. So, as you go about your day, consider the idea of living an examined life. Ask yourself, what beliefs or assumptions do I hold that might need to be questioned? How can I engage with the world more thoughtfully, more mindfully? Just like Socrates, we can all find a kind of inner peace through the simple act of asking, listening, and learning. As we continue along this peaceful journey, we step into the tranquil world of Laozi, the legendary philosopher behind one of the most profound teachings of ancient China, Taoism, or Taoism. Imagine yourself walking in the misty mountains, where every step feels lighter, and every breath you take seems to be in perfect harmony with nature. The air is crisp, the trees around you sway gently in the breeze, and the stillness is almost sacred. There, in the midst of this serenity, you encounter Laozi, the ancient sage, whose teachings are rooted in a simple yet profound philosophy. To live in harmony with the Tao, the way, the natural flow of the universe. You probably won't survive this journey without feeling a deep sense of calm within you. Laozi's teachings, though ancient, carry a timeless wisdom that continues to guide people on their quest for inner peace today. But how did Laozi come to such an understanding of the natural world and our place within it? So, before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the calm and peace we're creating together. Feel free to share your location and time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where this journey reaches. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's continue this exploration of peace together. Laozi's life is wrapped in mystery, with little known about his true identity. Some believe he was a historian during the Zhou dynasty, while others think he may have been a legendary figure whose teachings were passed down through oral tradition. Regardless of the specifics of his life, what remains undeniable is the profound influence of his teachings, which have lasted more than 2 millennia. The core of Laozi's philosophy is simple. Life is easier when we stop forcing things and allow them to unfold naturally. The Tao, often translated as the Way, refers to the natural order of the universe, an underlying flow that governs all things. To live in harmony with the Tao, Laozi taught, one must embrace the principle of Wu Wei, or non-action. This doesn't mean doing nothing, but rather acting in such a way that our actions align with the natural course of events, without forcing or resisting them. Historians still debate the origins of the Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism attributed to Laozi. Some argue that it is a compilation of various philosophical ideas that existed long before Laozi's time, while others believe Laozi was the sole author of this text, distilling ancient wisdom into a concise and poetic work. What's clear, however, is that the Tao Te Ching teaches us to live simply, to detach from excessive desires, and to trust in the natural rhythms of the world. Laozi's teachings present a striking contrast to the Western ideals of striving, achievement, and control. In many cultures, we are taught that success comes from relentless effort, pushing harder and doing more. Yet, Laozi invites us to consider a different approach, the art of letting go. He believed that when we stop striving against the current of life, we find peace. This doesn't mean abandoning our goals or desires, but rather letting go of the obsessive need to control every outcome. It's about trusting that the universe will unfold in its own time, and trusting ourselves to act with grace and ease when the moment arrives. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi wrote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." This simple statement captures the essence of his philosophy. It's not about racing ahead, but about taking that first step with awareness, patience, and mindfulness. The key to peace, according to Laozi, is not in grand, ambitious action, but in finding contentment in the small steps we take each day, acting with clarity and in harmony with the world around us. One of the most famous metaphors from Laozi's writings is the image of water. He describes the Tao as water, soft, yielding, yet powerful enough to shape mountains. Water doesn't force its way through obstacles. It flows around them, patiently carving its path. Laozi believed that we should be like water, gentle and adaptable, yet powerful in our quiet persistence. This image reminds us that peace doesn't come from brute force, but from the quiet, steady movement of our intentions, guided by the natural flow of life. This concept of non-action and yielding to the flow of life is known as Wu Wei, or effortless action. It is one of the most beautiful and challenging aspects of Taoism. It's not about doing nothing, but about doing things with a sense of ease and without unnecessary struggle. It's about letting go of the need to control every detail and trusting that everything will unfold as it should. The idea is that when we act in alignment with the natural rhythms of the world, things come together with far less resistance and effort. And, in this way, peace becomes a natural byproduct of living with the flow, not against it. Imagine, for a moment, that you are a river. You do not struggle against the rocks in your path or the twists and turns ahead. Instead, you move with the current, gently flowing around each obstacle, finding your way forward without force. This is the essence of Laozi's wisdom. Peace is not something we fight for or force upon the world, but something we allow to emerge naturally when we stop resisting. Laozi's message is an invitation to step back, breathe, and let go of the constant need to control and push. In today's world, where everything moves so quickly, and where we often feel the pressure to achieve more, Laozi's teachings offer a peaceful counterpoint. Be still, and allow the natural course of things to unfold. Think about your own life. How often do we find ourselves swimming upstream, pushing against the current, trying to make everything happen on our own terms? Laozi invites us to consider whether we might be able to find more peace by simply relaxing into the flow of life. It's not always easy, but it's a path that leads us to a deeper connection with the world around us. By following the Tao, Laozi teaches us to trust that everything has its time and place. We may not always know what lies ahead, but if we can learn to act with patience, humility, and acceptance, we can find peace in the present moment and trust that the universe will guide us to where we need to go. We continue our journey now into the world of Zen. a practice that offers us another path to peace. Imagine yourself in a quiet temple nestled deep in the mountains of Japan, where the only sounds are the soft murmur of a distant stream and the gentle rustling of leaves. In this tranquil place, monks sit in perfect stillness, their legs crossed, their eyes half closed, as they meditate with a calm intensity. This is the world of Zen, a practice that teaches peace through deep meditation and a profound simplicity of mind. You probably won't survive this section without feeling the urge to stop everything around you and take a moment of stillness. Zen meditation, or zazen, isn't about escaping life. It's about fully embracing it in its simplest, purest form. But how did this practice become such a revered method for attaining peace? So, before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the peaceful journey we're on together. I'm always curious where you're watching from, so feel free to share your location and the time in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, let your mind settle, and let's explore the calming world of Zen together. Zen Buddhism, which originated in China as Chan Buddhism before spreading to Japan, is built on the idea of direct experience. In Zen, there are no elaborate rituals or complex philosophical arguments, just a simple, unadorned focus on the present moment. The key to Zen peace lies in letting go of the constant chatter of the mind and allowing oneself to simply be. Through meditation, Zen teaches us to experience life directly, without the filter of judgment or distraction. The practice of zazen, sitting meditation, forms the core of Zen. The goal is not to empty the mind in a forced sense, but to observe thoughts as they arise without attachment or reaction. It's a way of training the mind to see things as they truly are, without the noise of our preferences, fears, and desires. In Zen, peace comes from the acceptance of the present moment, without trying to change or escape it. Historians still debate whether Zen Buddhism was an entirely new school of thought, or whether it was simply a continuation and refinement of earlier Buddhist traditions. The Zen emphasis on direct experience, however, represents a unique approach to peace that cuts through the layers of doctrine and dogma that can often cloud spiritual practice. Zen's roots in simplicity and directness speak to a deep understanding that peace is not something to be attained, but something that already exists within us, if we only stop and pay attention. One of the most powerful elements of Zen is the practice of koans, puzzling, paradoxical questions or statements that break the logical mind's hold over us. A famous example is the question, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The point of a koan is not to find an answer, but to help the practitioner transcend the logical, analytical mind and enter a space of pure experience. Koans force the mind to let go of its usual patterns of thinking and allow us to experience a moment of clarity and peace beyond words. Zen teaches us that peace is not a mental state we can achieve, but a quality of mind that we can cultivate by learning to quiet our internal chatter and be present with whatever arises. In Zen practice, we don't resist our thoughts or emotions. We simply observe them, knowing they are transient. Just like clouds drifting through the sky, our thoughts pass by, and we do not need to hold on to them or identify with them. Through this practice, we learn that we are not our thoughts. We are the quiet space in which they arise and dissolve. One of the key elements of Zen is the practice of mindfulness, being fully present in whatever we are doing, whether it's sitting in meditation, eating, walking, or even washing dishes. Zen teaches us that every moment is an opportunity to experience peace, if we approach it with full attention and acceptance. In the West, mindfulness has become a widely practiced tool for managing stress and anxiety, but its roots are deeply embedded in Zen. The idea is that when we are fully present in each moment, without judgment or distraction, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life and experience a deep sense of peace. The beauty of Zen lies in its simplicity. There's no need for complicated rituals or intellectual debates, just the practice of sitting, breathing, and being. It's a practice of letting go of everything, not by pushing it away, but by simply observing it and allowing it to be as it is. In a world full of noise and distractions, Zen invites us to return to the essence of who we are, beings who are connected to the world around us, and who can find peace in the simplest of actions. Imagine, for a moment, that you are sitting in a Zen garden surrounded by rocks, sand, and carefully placed plants. As you focus on your breath and the sensation of sitting, you notice how the thoughts of the day begin to fade into the background. The world slows down, and in that moment, you are completely present, connected to the earth, the air, and the stillness around you. This is the power of Zen, a practice that helps us shed the weight of the world and find peace in the present moment. Zen also teaches us the concept of satori, or sudden enlightenment. It's the experience of a profound shift in perception, where everything becomes clear and we see the world as it truly is. It's not something we can force or manufacture, but rather something that arises naturally when we stop clinging to our ideas of how things should be. Satori is a glimpse of true peace, one that arises not from effort, but from surrender and acceptance of the present moment. As you reflect on Zen, think about your own life. How often do you let your mind wander from the present moment? How often do you allow yourself to be consumed by worries about the future or regrets about the past? Zen teaches us to let go of these distractions and return to the present, where true peace resides. The practice of sitting quietly and simply being is a powerful reminder that peace doesn't have to be sought outside of ourselves. It is always within, waiting for us to notice. In today's world, where we are constantly moving, thinking, and reacting, Zen offers us a gentle invitation to slow down. It's a reminder that peace isn't something we need to strive for. It's something that can be found in every moment, if we only stop long enough to experience it. As our journey continues, we now turn to the rich spiritual traditions of India, where the path to peace is as much about self-discovery as it is about union with the divine. Picture yourself sitting in a lush forest by the banks of the Ganges River, surrounded by the sound of birds, rustling leaves, and the occasional distant chant of a temple bell. The air is thick with the earthy scent of incense and the hum of life. Here, in the heart of India, the great sages of the ancient world discovered paths to peace and enlightenment that are still followed by millions today. You probably won't survive this section without a sense of awe. The teachings of India are profound and deeply spiritual, guiding individuals toward peace through self-realization and connection to the greater universe. But how did these early thinkers, so attuned to the rhythms of nature, come to understand the interconnectedness of all things? So, before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the journey we're on together. Feel free to share where you're joining from and the time in your area. I'm always curious to see how far this peaceful voyage is reaching. Now, dim the lights, settle into your space, and let's dive into the teachings of India. India is home to a wide array of spiritual and philosophical traditions, but at the heart of many of them lies a simple idea. True peace comes from realizing our oneness with the universe. This concept is explored deeply in the Upanishads, ancient texts that form the philosophical backbone of Hinduism. The Upanishads teach that we are not separate from the world around us, but part of a greater, interconnected whole. The individual soul, or Atman, is seen as a reflection of the universal soul, or Brahman. When we realize this truth, we attain a state of peace that transcends the ego and connects us to the divine. One of the most profound teachings of the Upanishads is the idea that the mind is often a barrier to experiencing this deeper peace. Our thoughts, desires, and attachments create a sense of separation from the world around us. But through practices like meditation, contemplation, and self-inquiry, we can quiet the mind and experience the unity of all things. When the mind is still, the true self, the Atman, shines through, and we experience a peace that is beyond words. Historians still debate the exact origins of the Upanishads, but they are generally considered to have been written between 800 and 400 BCE, at a time when the religious and philosophical landscape of India was undergoing significant transformation. The Upanishads are a shift away from ritualistic worship to a more introspective, personal experience of the divine. They invite us to look inward and realize that the answers to our deepest questions lie within. The teachings of the Upanishads laid the foundation for many of the spiritual practices we associate with India today, including yoga and meditation. These practices are tools for quieting the mind, calming the body, and experiencing a deeper connection with the universe. In the West, yoga is often seen simply as a physical practice, but in India, it is understood as a spiritual discipline that encompasses both the body and the mind. It is a path toward inner peace that encourages us to align ourselves with the natural flow of life. One of the most famous sayings from the Upanishads is Tat Tvam Asi, meaning, "You are that." This simple phrase encapsulates the essence of the teachings. The divine is not something separate from us. It is us. The peace we seek is not outside of ourselves, but within us. It is a peace that comes from knowing our true nature and realizing that we are part of a greater whole. This teaching is echoed in many spiritual traditions, but in India, it is perhaps most fully realized in the understanding of Brahman and Atman. But it's not just about intellectual understanding. The Upanishads emphasize the importance of direct experience. Peace cannot be found in books or teachings alone. It must be lived and experienced in the present moment. Meditation is one of the primary tools for this direct experience, helping us to silence the distractions of the mind and come into alignment with the divine. Think for a moment about your own experience of meditation, or any time you've felt deeply connected to something greater than yourself. Whether you've meditated on a quiet morning, experienced a moment of awe in nature, or simply felt deeply at peace in a quiet space, you've tapped into the same wisdom that the ancient sages of India discovered thousands of years ago. These moments of connection remind us that peace is not something to be found in the external world, but within us, waiting to be realized. One of the core practices in many Indian traditions is surrender. The idea is that peace comes not from controlling life, but from accepting it as it is. The ego, with its constant desires and attachments, is the root of much of our suffering. But when we surrender our need to control and allow life to unfold as it will, we experience a deep sense of peace and trust. This surrender is not passive resignation, but an active letting go of the need to control everything around us. It is a peaceful acceptance of the flow of life. Think about how often we try to control the circumstances around us, whether it's the outcome of a situation or our relationships with others. We spend so much of our energy trying to shape the world in our image, yet true peace comes when we let go of this need. The teachings of India encourage us to surrender to life, to trust in its wisdom, and to find peace in the acceptance of what is. One of the most powerful images in Indian spirituality is the lotus flower. It begins life in the muddy waters of the pond, yet it grows upward, breaking through the surface to bloom in the sunlight. The lotus is a symbol of spiritual growth, of finding beauty and peace even in the most difficult circumstances. Like the lotus, we too can grow through our challenges, finding peace in the midst of life's chaos. As you reflect on these teachings, think about your own life. Are there places where you feel disconnected from the world around you, where you struggle to find peace? The wisdom of the Upanishads invites us to reconnect with our true nature and find peace not through external circumstances, but through our own deep awareness of the interconnectedness of all things. In a world that often encourages separation and competition, India's teachings remind us that we are all part of a greater whole. True peace is found when we realize that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a vast, interconnected universe. And when we embrace this truth, we open ourselves to a deeper, more lasting peace. As our peaceful journey continues, we now arrive at a thinker whose ideas echoed through the halls of both Western and Eastern philosophy. Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician and philosopher, may not be the first person you think of when it comes to peace and spirituality, but his teachings offer a fascinating blend of math, music, and the quest for harmony in the universe. Imagine yourself in ancient Greece, standing in the shadow of towering marble columns, the sun casting long shadows on the ground. The air is rich with the fragrance of olive trees and the distant sound of a lyre being played. In this tranquil setting, Pythagoras and his followers are busy contemplating the relationship between numbers, music, and the very fabric of the cosmos. You probably won't survive this section without seeing the world in a new way, where mathematics, music, and spirituality all blend together in a harmony that leads us closer to peace. But how did a philosopher who was deeply concerned with numbers come to a conclusion that the universe itself is governed by music? Before we dive into Pythagoras' teachings, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the peaceful, philosophical journey we've been on together. Feel free to share your location and time in the comments. I love seeing where this journey reaches. Now, dim those lights, take a deep breath, and let's continue exploring the peaceful world of Pythagoras. Pythagoras is perhaps best known for his famous theorem in geometry, which states that in a right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. While his contributions to mathematics are undeniable, what often gets lost is how Pythagoras viewed mathematics not merely as a tool for measurement, but as a gateway to understanding the universe itself. For Pythagoras, the study of numbers and their relationships held the key to unlocking the mysteries of life and the cosmos. Historians still debate the extent of Pythagoras' influence and the accuracy of the records about his life. Some believe that many of the ideas attributed to him may have been the work of his followers. What is clear, however, is that Pythagoras was not just a mathematician. He was a mystic, a seeker of harmony, and a believer in the deep interconnectedness of all things. For Pythagoras, the universe was governed by mathematical ratios, and it was through understanding these ratios that one could find peace and harmony. One of the most intriguing aspects of Pythagoras's philosophy is his belief that the universe itself is musical. Pythagoras discovered that when you pluck a string of a musical instrument, the resulting sound is determined by the length of the string, and that certain ratios of string lengths produce harmonious sounds. In fact, he is credited with the discovery that a simple harmonious ratio, 2:1, produces an octave, a pleasing interval in music. This idea that the universe is made up of mathematical proportions and that music plays a central role in the order of things became a central tenet of Pythagorean thought. In a way, Pythagoras viewed the cosmos as a giant symphony, with everything in the universe vibrating in harmony according to mathematical laws. This idea is fascinating because it suggests that peace is not something we must force or search for externally. It is embedded in the very structure of reality. Just as a perfectly tuned musical instrument produces a harmonious sound, so too does a well-ordered life, lived in accordance with the natural laws of the universe, produce peace. Pythagoras's teachings went beyond music and mathematics. He believed that the soul could be purified through the contemplation of numbers, music, and meditation. To the Pythagoreans, the ideal life was one that sought harmony in all things, whether it was in the way one conducted themselves in society, the way one played music, or the way one viewed the cosmos. For Pythagoras, peace was not a fleeting emotion or a temporary state. It was the natural result of living in alignment with the harmony of the universe. But Pythagoras didn't stop at the mathematical and musical realms. He was also deeply concerned with ethics and personal conduct. He encouraged his followers to live lives of moderation, avoiding excess and indulgence in favor of simplicity and balance. This approach to life mirrored his philosophy of the universe. Just as the universe itself is governed by mathematical harmony, so too should our lives be guided by principles of balance and proportion. In a sense, Pythagoras's teachings remind us that peace doesn't come from chasing after it or trying to force it into our lives. Instead, peace arises naturally when we align ourselves with the natural rhythms and laws of the universe. When we live in harmony with our surroundings, with others, and with ourselves, we naturally find peace. This is not a passive state, but one that requires conscious effort and discipline, just as a musician must train to play in tune with the music. It's a continual process of seeking balance and understanding the interconnections of all things. Imagine, for a moment, that your life is a musical composition. Every action, every thought, every relationship is a note in the symphony of your existence. How can you tune your life to play in harmony with the world around you? This is what Pythagoras was searching for, a life in perfect harmony with the natural order, where peace and serenity flow naturally from living in alignment with the universe's intrinsic rhythms. In the modern world, we often think of peace as something we must find or achieve. We are constantly bombarded with external stimuli, and our minds are often cluttered with distractions. But Pythagoras teaches us that peace is not something we must chase. It's something that emerges when we align ourselves with the natural order, when we live with awareness and mindfulness, when we cultivate harmony in our relationships and our actions. Think about your own life. How often do you find yourself struggling against the current of the world around you? How often do you feel out of sync, as if your life is not in harmony with the rhythm of the universe? Pythagoras would suggest that true peace comes not from forcing things into place, but from aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life, much like a musician who listens carefully to the music and plays with precision and awareness. As you reflect on Pythagoras' teachings, consider how you might bring more harmony into your own life. How can you create balance in your relationships, in your work, and in your inner world? Peace doesn't come from perfection. It comes from tuning ourselves to the natural rhythms of life and allowing those rhythms to guide us. As we continue, let's turn our attention to another philosophy rooted in the pursuit of peace, one that is based on the pursuit of pleasure, yet, paradoxically, not in the way you might think. The Epicureans, led by the philosopher Epicurus, taught that pleasure was the highest good, but not in the way of indulgence or excess. Instead, their idea of pleasure was rooted in simplicity, moderation, and the cultivation of inner tranquility. Imagine yourself in an idyllic garden in ancient Athens, surrounded by serene ponds, shaded groves, and the soft hum of nature. In this peaceful retreat, Epicurus and his followers sought to teach the art of living well, not through material accumulation or hedonistic pursuits, but by understanding the nature of desires and focusing on those that bring true, lasting satisfaction. You probably won't survive this section without feeling the urge to simplify your life and reflect on the pleasures that truly bring peace to your mind and heart. But how did the Epicureans arrive at the conclusion that true pleasure comes from simplicity and self-control? So, before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the journey we're taking together. As always, feel free to share your location and time. It's fascinating to see how far this exploration of peace reaches. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let's delve into the peaceful philosophy of Epicureanism. Epicurus, who lived around 341 to 270 BCE, is often misunderstood in popular culture. Many associate his name with indulgence and excess, but Epicurus actually promoted a life of moderation and mindful living. His philosophy was based on the idea that pleasure, the absence of pain, and the pursuit of knowledge are the keys to happiness. But the key to achieving these pleasures, Epicurus taught, lay in understanding which desires are natural and necessary, which are unnecessary, and which are simply vain distractions. According to Epicurus, the pursuit of physical pleasures, such as food and drink, could lead to happiness, but only when enjoyed in moderation. It was not the excess or overindulgence in such pleasures that would bring lasting happiness, but the simple, moderate enjoyment of them. Epicurus taught that true happiness is found not in quantity, but in quality. A simple meal shared with a friend, a moment of reflection under the stars, or the warmth of a cozy home could provide more lasting contentment than the endless pursuit of wealth or fame. Historians still debate the extent to which Epicurus was the originator of these ideas, or whether they were influenced by earlier philosophical traditions. Some point to the Cyrenaic school, another ancient Greek school of philosophy that emphasized pleasure as the ultimate goal of life. However, what set Epicurus apart was his deep emphasis on mental peace and tranquility. For Epicurus, true pleasure was not found in external objects or fleeting experiences, but in the cultivation of a calm, thoughtful mind. One of the key elements of Epicurean philosophy was the idea that fear is a major source of human suffering. In particular, Epicurus focused on the fear of death and the fear of the gods. He argued that death is simply the end of conscious experience, and that there is no need to fear it. When we stop fearing death and the judgment of gods, we are freed from the anxieties that prevent us from enjoying life. By accepting the natural course of life and death, Epicurus believed, we could live more fully and peacefully. This view of death as a natural, non-threatening process was radical for its time. In many ancient cultures, the fear of death and the gods was a central motivator for religious and philosophical practices. But Epicurus's teachings offered a different perspective, that peace comes not from external approval, but from inner acceptance. When we release our fears about death, we free ourselves to live in the present, to focus on the pleasures that truly matter, and to cultivate a state of inner calm. The Epicurean pursuit of peace also involved ataraxia, or a state of inner tranquility that comes from the absence of mental disturbance. Epicurus taught that peace of mind was essential for happiness, and that by limiting our desires, practicing moderation, and avoiding unnecessary worries, we could achieve this state of calm. In this way, peace is not something that can be found in external circumstances, but is cultivated from within. One of the most famous sayings of Epicurus is, "Not what we have, but what we enjoy, constitutes our abundance." This emphasizes that peace and happiness are not dependent on material wealth or external possessions, but on our ability to find contentment in the simple pleasures of life. Epicurus didn't argue that wealth and luxury were inherently bad, but rather that the pursuit of them often leads to anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction. True abundance, he believed, comes from the ability to appreciate the simple things: good food, good friends, meaningful work, and the beauty of nature. It's interesting to reflect on how Epicurus's ideas about peace and pleasure apply to our modern lives. In today's world, we are constantly bombarded by advertisements, social media, and the pressure to consume more, to have the latest gadgets, the biggest house, the trendiest clothes. But Epicurus would argue that the more we focus on these external markers of success, the more we distance ourselves from true happiness. True pleasure comes not from acquiring more, but from simplifying our lives and focusing on the things that bring us true joy: connection, contemplation, and contentment. Imagine, for a moment, that you were living an Epicurean life. How would you define your pleasures? Would you focus on material possessions? Or would you find satisfaction in a quiet moment with a friend, a walk in the park, or a warm cup of tea? How often do we allow ourselves to enjoy these simple pleasures without rushing on to the next thing? Epicurus's teachings remind us that the key to lasting happiness is not in accumulating more, but in appreciating what we already have. The Epicurean path to peace involves cultivating a mindset of mindfulness, simplicity, and acceptance. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure, but about finding true contentment in the simple joys of life and letting go of the constant craving for more. As you reflect on this, think about your own life. What are the things that bring you peace and contentment? What desires can you release in order to cultivate a simpler, more peaceful existence? As we continue this exploration of ancient wisdom and the search for peace, we now find ourselves at the intersection of mind, body, and spirit. The Tao of healing, ancient practices that merge philosophy with medicine, offers another path to tranquility. Imagine yourself in a quiet, serene room in an ancient Chinese temple, where an elder healer gently massages pressure points on the body, guiding the energy, or qi, through the meridians of the body. The soft sound of flowing water from a nearby stream adds to the calm atmosphere, and every movement is deliberate, mindful, and healing. The air is filled with the scent of herbs, incense, and the promise of restoration. In this space, you experience firsthand how healing the body can lead to peace in the mind and soul. You probably won't survive this section without feeling the urge to reconnect with your own body, perhaps through simple, mindful practices that allow you to heal and restore balance. But how did ancient traditions like traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, and other healing arts connect physical health with mental peace? Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy our ongoing journey. As always, feel free to share where you're joining from and the time in your area. It's wonderful to see how wide-reaching this journey is. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's explore the ancient Taoist approach to healing and peace. The Taoist approach to healing is based on the belief that the body, mind, and spirit are interconnected, and that peace can only be achieved when all three are in balance. At the core of Taoist medicine is the concept of qi, pronounced qi, the vital energy that flows through the body and all of nature. Just as rivers and streams flow through the earth, qi flows through the body, maintaining health and vitality. When this flow is disrupted, whether by physical injury, emotional stress, or spiritual imbalance, illness and disharmony occur. Therefore, Taoist healing practices aim to restore the natural flow of qi, thereby bringing peace and harmony to the body and mind. Historians still argue whether Taoist medicine evolved independently or whether it was influenced by earlier healing traditions in ancient China. What is clear, however, is that Taoist healing was grounded in the same principles that govern all of Taoist philosophy: balance, harmony, and the understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. In the Taoist worldview, the body is not an isolated entity, but part of a greater interconnected system that includes the natural world, the cosmos, and the mind. One of the most fascinating aspects of Taoist healing is the use of acupuncture, the practice of inserting fine needles into specific points on the body to regulate the flow of qi. These points correspond to the meridians, energy channels that run through the body, similar to how rivers carve through the land. By stimulating these points, the practitioner can remove blockages, restore balance, and promote healing. The idea is not just to treat the symptoms of illness, but to address the root cause by restoring harmony to the body's energy flow. Along with acupuncture, Taoist healing includes practices like herbal medicine, massage, such as tuina, and the practice of qigong, a form of movement and breath work designed to cultivate and balance qi in the body. Through these practices, the Taoist healer brings the patient's energy into harmony, alleviating stress and promoting physical, mental, and emotional well-being. The goal of these practices is not just to heal the body, but to bring about a deeper sense of inner peace and balance. What makes Taoist healing especially profound is its holistic approach. In Western medicine, we often focus on treating symptoms, such as taking medication for pain or using surgery to fix a physical problem. But Taoist healing seeks to understand the root causes of illness, addressing the imbalances in the body's energy system, mind, and spirit. It is believed that emotional and psychological stress can have a profound impact on our physical health, and by calming the mind and restoring emotional balance, one can achieve physical healing as well. This holistic approach is also evident in the practice of dietary therapy, which is a key component of Taoist medicine. Taoist teachings emphasize the importance of eating in harmony with nature, consuming foods that balance the body's energy and promote health. For example, warm, nourishing foods are thought to support the body's yang energy, while cool, light foods balance yin energy. The foods we eat, according to Taoist thought, not only nourish the body but also influence our mental and emotional state. By eating in harmony with nature and the seasons, we cultivate balance and peace within. Taoist healing also teaches us the importance of rest and relaxation. In our fast-paced, busy world, we often neglect the importance of sleep and downtime, pushing ourselves to the limit in pursuit of success. But the Taoists understood that true health and peace come from periods of rest and renewal. The body, like all things in nature, needs time to rest and restore its energy. When we deny ourselves this rest, we disrupt the flow of qi and invite illness and imbalance. But beyond physical health, Taoist philosophy emphasizes the importance of Wu Wei, a concept we encountered earlier in our journey through Laozi's teachings. Wu Wei translates to non-action or effortless action, and it is about living in harmony with the natural flow of life. In Taoist healing, this concept translates into letting go of excessive control, fear, and resistance. When we stop forcing things to happen and allow life to unfold naturally, we restore balance to the body and mind. Wu Wei teaches us that peace doesn't come from trying to control every aspect of life, but from accepting what comes and responding with grace and mindfulness. As you reflect on Taoist healing, think about your own approach to health and peace. How often do we focus on treating the symptoms of our discomfort, be it physical, emotional, or mental, without considering the root causes? Taoist medicine invites us to look beyond the surface and seek the deeper imbalances that may be affecting our well-being. It teaches us that true healing and peace come when we restore balance to our body, mind, and spirit, and when we learn to live in harmony with the world around us. In a world that often feels out of balance, the teachings of Taoist healing remind us that peace is not something we need to chase, but something we can cultivate by reconnecting with the natural rhythms of life. When we embrace this holistic approach, we can restore harmony to our own lives, and in turn, share that peace with the world around us. As we continue our journey, we now turn to a tradition that speaks to the heart of human connection, love, and humility: early Christianity. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling streets of ancient Jerusalem, the sun casting long shadows over the stone paths. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the murmurs of people gathered together, exchanging ideas and stories. Amidst this, you encounter the teachings of Jesus Christ, humble, profound, and deeply focused on peace and reconciliation. His message was simple but radical. Peace comes through love, humility, and a deep connection with others and the divine. You probably won't survive this section without feeling a wave of warmth and compassion wash over you. Christianity's message of peace, particularly in the teachings of Jesus, was transformative, shifting the focus from strict religious rituals to personal relationships and inner humility. But how did these teachings, which emphasized selflessness and forgiveness, become a guiding force for peace around the world? Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the peaceful journey we've been on together. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so feel free to share your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, relax, and let's explore the peace found in the teachings of early Christianity. Christianity, particularly in its early form, offered a message of profound peace rooted in love, humility, and grace. At the heart of Christian teachings is the concept of agape, a form of selfless love that seeks the well-being of others without expectation of reward. This love is not simply an emotion, but an active choice to serve, forgive, and reconcile with others. It is through this love that true peace can be found, not just within individuals, but within communities, societies, and the world. Historians still argue about the precise nature of early Christian communities, particularly those following Jesus' death and resurrection. While the apostles and early followers spread Christianity throughout the Roman Empire, the core message remained focused on the teachings of Jesus. That peace comes from loving one another, from forgiving those who have wronged us, and from seeking harmony with both humanity and the divine. One of the most striking aspects of Jesus' teachings was his emphasis on humility. In a world driven by power, status, and wealth, Jesus taught that the truly blessed were the poor in spirit, the meek, and the merciful. These teachings turned conventional wisdom on its head. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and emphasized that true greatness comes not through domination, but through service and love. This message resonated deeply in a world where those in power often sought their own gain. The radical idea that peace could be achieved through humility and love set Christianity apart from the more hierarchical philosophies of its time. The act of forgiveness was another key element of Jesus' message. The famous parable of the prodigal son is one of the clearest examples of how forgiveness and reconciliation were central to Christian peace. In the parable, a son who has squandered his inheritance is welcomed back by his father with open arms, despite his mistakes. This act of unconditional forgiveness reflects a deeper truth. Peace is not something that comes from being right or holding grudges, but from reconciling with others and letting go of past offenses. This idea of reconciliation is not only personal, but communal. Early Christian communities practiced love, forgiveness, and mutual support as central values. The Apostle Paul, in his letters, frequently emphasized the importance of unity in Christ, urging communities to live in peace, to bear one another's burdens, and to forgive one another just as Christ forgave them. The early Christian church was a place where the teachings of peace were lived out daily, where people were encouraged to focus on love and humility as the pathway to personal and collective peace. But the teachings of peace in early Christianity were not confined to the personal realm. They also had a profound impact on societal peace. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, with its calls for mercy, justice, and love, provided a blueprint for how society could be more harmonious and just. In an era of oppression and political unrest, the Christian message of peace through humility and love was seen as a radical call for a new social order, one based on care for the poor, compassion for the sick, and love for one's enemies. One of the most powerful messages of early Christianity is that peace is not something we achieve alone or through external force. It is a peace that comes from within, a peace rooted in the love we show to others, and in the humility we cultivate within ourselves. It's not a peace that can be forced, nor is it a peace that can be sustained by external power or wealth. It is, at its core, a peace that springs from a deep relationship with God and with one another. Jesus' teachings remind us that peace begins in the heart. When we let go of anger, hatred, and judgment, we make room for love, which leads to peace. In today's world, where division and conflict seem so prevalent, the Christian message of peace remains as relevant as ever. It calls us to move beyond our differences, to forgive, to love without condition, and to seek reconciliation, even with those who have wronged us. It is a message of hope, reminding us that peace is not an impossible ideal, but a living reality that can be built through daily acts of love, humility, and forgiveness. As you reflect on these teachings, think about the relationships in your own life. Are there areas where you could bring more peace by practicing humility, forgiveness, and love? How often do we hold on to grudges or let anger cloud our judgment? The Christian message invites us to step back, let go of resentment, and embrace the peace that comes from reconciliation and love. The pursuit of peace through love and humility is a powerful reminder that true peace is not a fleeting emotion or external circumstance, but a way of life that is nurtured in the heart. By embracing this approach, we can begin to cultivate peace in our own lives and spread it to others. As we move forward, we arrive at a mystical tradition that has touched the hearts of millions, inviting them to explore a path to peace through divine love and spiritual connection. Sufism. Imagine walking through the vast, sun-dappled desert, the endless sand dunes stretching before you like waves in the ocean. The air is dry but calm, and as you move further, you see a group of people gathered around, their voices lifted in beautiful, melodic chants, their bodies moving in rhythmic, trance-like dance. This is the world of the Sufis, devotees of Ishq, the divine love, whose spiritual practices focus on seeking peace through a profound connection to God. You probably won't survive this section without feeling an intense longing for a deeper, more intimate relationship with the universe, one that transcends the surface of daily life and reaches into the heart of existence itself. But how did the Sufis come to understand that peace lies in the surrender to divine love and the annihilation of the self? Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the spiritual journey we're on together. As always, feel free to share where you're joining from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, settle in, relax, and let's explore the spiritual peace found through Sufism. Sufism, often described as Islamic mysticism, is a path that seeks closeness to God through love, devotion, and self-purification. Sufis believe that true peace comes from surrendering the ego and opening the heart to the divine. The ultimate goal of the Sufi is to experience ishq, a passionate love for God that transcends everything else. The journey to this divine love is not through intellectual reasoning or ritual alone, but through the deep, transformative experience of connecting with the divine presence that pervades all of existence. Historians trace the origins of Sufism back to the early centuries of Islam, though its mystical elements can be found in various religious traditions long before the advent of Islam. What sets Sufism apart is its focus on the heart and the soul. While traditional religious practices often focus on outward rituals, Sufism turns inward, seeking the direct experience of divine presence and love. The central practice of Sufism is dhikr, the remembrance of God. This practice involves repeating the names of God, meditating on divine attributes, and focusing the mind and heart on the divine. Through dhikr, the Sufi is reminded that everything in the world is connected through divine love, and that true peace arises when one surrenders the self to that love. One of the most beautiful and striking elements of Sufism is the practice of the whirling dervish. This sacred dance is a form of meditation, where the Sufi spins in a circle, symbolizing the movement of the universe and the heart's longing for God. The spinning movement, which seems to defy gravity, is not just a physical act. It is an expression of spiritual surrender, of letting go of the ego and becoming one with the divine flow of love that permeates all things. The whirling itself is a form of deep meditation that symbolizes the Sufi's journey toward inner peace and connection with the divine. By spinning, the Sufi creates a state of ecstatic union with God, where the physical body is left behind and the soul is free to experience divine love in its purest form. This act of surrender is a powerful metaphor for the Sufi path. Peace is not found through control or self-will, but through the letting go of the ego and the acceptance of divine will. Historians still debate the origins of the whirling dance, with some suggesting that it may have been influenced by earlier mystic practices from ancient Persia, or even from pre-Islamic religious rituals. What is clear, however, is that the whirling dervishes, with their hypnotic, spiraling movements, have become one of the most iconic symbols of Sufism. The dance is a visual representation of the mystical experience that Sufis seek, a return to the heart of existence, where love, peace, and divine presence are one. The most famous Sufi poet, Rumi, encapsulates the essence of Sufism in his teachings on love. Rumi's poetry speaks of the longing for divine union, the bliss of surrendering to God's love, and the peace that comes from transcending the ego. One of his most famous lines reads, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love." It will not lead you astray. Rumi teaches that the heart's deepest longings are the key to peace. When we follow the pull of divine love, we are guided to our truest self, where peace resides. What makes Rumi's poetry so powerful is that it speaks to the universal longing for connection and peace. It doesn't matter what religious tradition you follow. Rumi's words transcend boundaries and speak to the soul's innate desire to reunite with the divine, to experience love in its purest form. His poetry invites us to seek peace not through intellectual understanding, but through the experience of love and surrender. The teachings of Sufism invite us to see that peace is not something that can be gained through effort or external achievement. Instead, it is a state of being that arises when we let go of the ego, surrender to divine love, and open our hearts to the flow of grace. In a world full of distractions, Sufism reminds us that true peace is found in the stillness of the heart and the surrender of the self. Sufi teachings also emphasize the importance of Tawhid, or the unity of God. The Sufi sees God as present in all things, and by recognizing the divine in everything around us, we come to a deeper understanding of peace. In this way, Sufism encourages us to transcend the dualities of the world, to see beyond our separations and divisions, and to realize the underlying unity that connects all of creation. Imagine, for a moment, that you are a Sufi, sitting in stillness, focusing on the divine presence that surrounds you. In that moment of quiet surrender, you feel a profound peace. Your heart opens to the divine love that permeates all things, and in that moment, you are at one with the universe. This is the peace that Sufism teaches, a peace that arises not from external circumstances, but from surrendering the self to the divine flow of love. As you reflect on Sufism, think about the ways you might invite more peace into your own life. Are there places where you can surrender more fully, whether to God, to the universe, or to the inherent flow of life? The Sufi path teaches us that peace is found not through effort, but through surrender and love. It is a peace that flows naturally when we release our attachment to the ego and embrace the love that connects all things. As we near the end of our journey, we turn now to a philosophical tradition that rejects societal conventions and embraces the simple, rugged life. The Cynics. Imagine yourself in the bustling streets of ancient Athens, where you encounter a philosopher unlike any other. He wears tattered clothes, carries no possessions, and seems entirely unconcerned with the opinions of those around him. This is Diogenes, the most famous of the Cynics, a man who lived not according to the rules of society, but according to his own principles of freedom, simplicity, and peace. You probably won't survive this section without feeling a little bit inspired to live a simpler, freer life, perhaps even questioning the societal norms that govern your own daily existence. But how did the Cynics come to understand that true peace and freedom are found not in wealth, power, or status, but in rejecting these very things? Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy our exploration of ancient philosophies. It's always interesting to hear where you're joining from, so feel free to share your location and time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, take a deep breath, and let's dive into the world of the Cynics. The Cynics were a group of philosophers who believed that true happiness and peace could only be found by living a life of complete self-sufficiency, free from the distractions and corrupting influences of society. They rejected the conventional values of wealth, fame, and power, instead advocating for a life of simplicity, freedom, and honesty. Their radical approach to life was based on the belief that people should live in accordance with nature, without the artificial constraints of social conventions. At the heart of Cynicism was the idea that virtue, living a life in accordance with nature and reason, was the only true source of happiness. For the Cynics, peace did not come from accumulating possessions or seeking approval from others, but from rejecting the superficial distractions of life and living authentically. In this way, the Cynics taught that peace is found in freedom, the freedom to be yourself, without concern for what others think. The most famous of the Cynics, Diogenes of Sinope, embodied these values in the most extreme ways. He lived in a barrel, or tub, on the streets of Athens, scorned material possessions, and often acted in ways that shocked others. When asked what he wanted from life, Diogenes famously replied, "I am looking for an honest man." His rejection of societal norms was not out of cynicism or misanthropy, but out of a desire to live a life of authenticity, free from the pressures and illusions of society. Historians still debate how seriously we should take the anecdotes about Diogenes' eccentric behavior. Some see him as a playful figure, poking fun at the hypocrisy of society, while others view him as a more serious critic of the social structures of his time. Regardless of how we interpret his actions, what remains clear is that Diogenes' life was a living critique of the pursuit of wealth, power, and status. His message was simple. True peace comes when we stop chasing after what society tells us we need, and instead embrace the freedom that comes with living simply and authentically. Diogenes' teachings were radical in their rejection of societal norms. He famously walked around Athens during the day with a lantern, claiming to be looking for an honest man. This act was a direct critique of the dishonesty and hypocrisy he saw in the political and social elite of Athens. For Diogenes, true peace was not found in the riches or accolades of society, but in the honesty of living a life true to oneself. One of the most famous stories about Diogenes involves his encounter with Alexander the Great. When the powerful ruler approached Diogenes and asked if there was anything he could do for him, Diogenes reportedly replied, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." This response encapsulates the Cynic philosophy. Diogenes didn't need anything from the king because he had already rejected the need for external validation or possessions. To Diogenes, Peace came from living in harmony with nature and his own desires, free from the artificial wants imposed by society. The Cynics were also known for their disregard of social conventions and their commitment to living in accordance with nature. They believed that humans, like animals, should live without unnecessary adornment or pretense. Diogenes, for example, was notorious for performing acts of extreme simplicity, such as eating in public, relieving himself in the marketplace, or refusing to bathe in favor of what he saw as the natural state of the body. These actions were not meant to shock for shock's sake, but to demonstrate the Cynic belief that society's conventions were arbitrary and unnecessary. True peace, they believed, came when one rejected the false needs and conventions of society and embraced a life of simplicity and freedom. The Cynic's teachings are still relevant today. In a world that often equates happiness with the accumulation of wealth, status, and material goods, their message reminds us that peace cannot be bought. It is found in the simplicity of life, in our ability to reject the false promises of consumerism, and find contentment in what we already have. The Cynics teach us that peace comes from within, from the freedom to live authentically, free from the expectations and judgments of others. Imagine, for a moment, that you were living as Diogenes did, free from the constraints of societal expectations, content with what you have, and focused only on living in accordance with your true nature. How would this affect your sense of peace? Would you feel more at ease, less burdened by the pressures of modern life? The Cynic path teaches us that true peace comes when we stop trying to conform to external ideals, and instead live in a way that feels true and authentic to who we really are. In today's world, where we are constantly bombarded by messages about what we need to be happy, the Cynic's message of simplicity and freedom offers a powerful antidote. By rejecting the societal pressures that dictate our desires and expectations, we open ourselves to a deeper, more lasting peace. It is in this freedom, freedom from the need to impress others, to accumulate more, to live up to societal standards, that we find peace. As we near the end of this tranquil journey, we reflect on the lasting impact of the ancient philosophies we've explored, and the way they shape our understanding of peace today. From the Stoics in ancient Greece to the Sufis in the deserts of the East, each tradition has offered us a unique way to approach the world with serenity, clarity, and love. But before we finish, let's take a moment to consider how these ancient teachings come together in the pursuit of lasting peace. Imagine standing in a peaceful garden, the sun beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the landscape. The trees sway gently in the breeze, and the soft hum of nature fills the air. As you sit quietly, reflecting on everything we've learned, you begin to realize that the wisdom of the ages isn't separate, but deeply interconnected. Each philosophy, whether from the West or the East, from ancient Greece, China, or Persia, offers its own piece of the puzzle in the search for peace. But the heart of all these teachings is simple. Peace is not something we achieve by force. It is something we cultivate through awareness, simplicity, love, and understanding. You probably won't survive this reflection without feeling a sense of unity, a recognition that all these paths to peace have something in common, a focus on the present moment, on letting go of ego, and on embracing life as it is. But how do we take all this wisdom and weave it into our own lives, creating a path of peace that is meaningful and enduring? So, before we conclude, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you've found this journey inspiring. As always, I'd love to hear where you're joining from and what time it is where you are. Your reflections on this journey are always welcome. Now, take a deep breath, relax, and let's wind down our exploration of peace. The teachings we've explored have all offered us unique perspectives on what it means to live in peace. From Socrates, who encouraged us to engage deeply with our lives through constant questioning, to the Stoics, who reminded us that peace comes from within, not from external circumstances, from Confucius, who taught that peace is found in harmony with others, to the Buddha, who showed us that peace can be realized when we let go of suffering and attachment. Each philosopher and tradition has given us tools to find peace, and each one is valuable in its own way. But one of the most profound insights that we can draw from all these teachings is that peace is not a static state. It is a process. It's not something that happens once and for all. It is something we must actively cultivate every day. Whether it's through mindfulness, love, self-inquiry, or simplicity, peace is a way of being that requires our constant attention. As we walk through life, we are offered moments to practice peace, whether in our relationships, in our work, or within our own hearts. The path to peace, then, is not about avoiding life's challenges or escaping from pain. Rather, it is about how we meet these challenges and pain, how we respond to the world around us, and how we choose to live each moment. It is about finding stillness amidst the noise, simplicity in the complexity, and love in the face of fear. As we look back on the teachings of the Cynics, we remember that peace also comes from within, through the freedom to live authentically and without attachment to the external trappings of success. The Sufis, too, remind us that peace is found in surrendering to the divine, in embracing love and humility. The Epicureans show us that true pleasure, and by extension peace, is found in simplicity and moderation, while Taoism teaches us to flow with the natural order of life, without resistance. Ultimately, the greatest lesson from all these traditions is that peace is not a destination, but a journey. It is the continual process of returning to the present moment, letting go of attachments, and cultivating inner stillness. It is the practice of embracing life as it is, without clinging to expectations or fears. And it is the realization that peace is already within us, waiting to be uncovered. As we bring our journey to a close, I invite you to reflect on how you can incorporate these teachings into your own life. What practices can you adopt to bring more peace into your daily routine? How can you live more simply, love more fully, and connect with the world around you in a deeper, more peaceful way? The path to peace is not always easy. It requires patience, dedication, and a willingness to look inward. But the wisdom of the ancients offers us a roadmap, a way to navigate the challenges of life with grace and serenity. By drawing on these teachings, we can all find our own unique path to peace, one that resonates with our heart and brings us closer to the divine peace that lies at the center of existence. So, take a deep breath, feel the peace within you, and carry it with you as you move through the world. You have everything you need to find peace, right here, right now. As we conclude this journey, we've explored ancient paths leading to inner peace, from the profound philosophies of Greek, Chinese, and Indian sages to the timeless lessons of saints and mystical traditions. While each philosophy may seem distinct, they all share a common thread. Peace is not a distant destination, but a continuous process, a practice to be nurtured in every moment of life. Each tradition, though unique, guides us toward a deeper understanding of our true nature, harmony with the world, and peace within ourselves. True peace is not found in avoiding suffering, but in how we face it, with patience, compassion, and an open heart. In the end, peace is a gift that we can discover within ourselves. Take time to pause, listen to your inner voice, and reconnect with the simple things around you. Peace is always present, waiting for us to embrace and explore. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find peace in every step, in every breath, and in each moment of your life.